Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining us on your lunch break here today, this fine Wednesday. We're going to give people a few seconds here to get settled in, and then we'll kick it over to Rob and Ray to get started on the presentation. All right, gentlemen, whenever you guys are ready to get started, go ahead, fire it off.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Good afternoon, everyone on the East Coast, and good morning to everybody else. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to our what's turning out to be the annual presentation of our parking structure cost outlook. Every year for more than 20 years at this point, we've published our cost outlook for parking structure construction costs, and every year we hear from folks across the country who either tell us our numbers are right on target or tell us that we're out of our minds and our numbers are high or low. So as we go through this, just keep in mind that our cost outlook is a starting point, and the unique requirements of your project are going to define how things go, but hopefully this is a useful tool to everybody out there. Starting with introductions, go ahead, Ray.
I'm Raymond Smith of WGI. I'm out of the Indianapolis office in Indiana. I'm a structural engineer by education, but been a parking consultant doing all kinds of different planning, new designs, restoration of parking structures around the country for the last 29 years.
And I'm Rob McConnell, one of the VPs along with Ray in the Parking Solutions Division, or Parking Solutions Group, I should say. And I'm also a corrupted structural engineer, although I don't do much of the nuts and bolts stuff anymore. But parking is our lives at this point. Here at WGI, we're a multidiscipline transportation-focused planning and design firm. And here's a map of our offices. And I just realized this morning that for some reason our Denver office has disappeared from this thing. And I don't know what's going on there, so we need to get that back on there. We do still have a Denver office, so Denver folks, especially our folks in Denver. Don't worry about that. Anyway, as I mentioned, Ray and I are in the Parking Solutions Group, and we're gradually taking over the world here. Here's a outline of what we're going to cover today. Try to keep things pretty high level. If you have attended this one of our presentations in the past, I think this is the fourth one we've done. The numbers or the slides and the numbers are probably going to look pretty familiar to you, although we've updated some of the graphics and obviously updated the numbers for this year and made a few other significant tweaks. I will warn you, as I have in past presentations, that this sausage making that is our cost analysis, parking cost outlook, is very, very numbers heavy. So try to hang with us, and hopefully you've had your caffeine and are not going to fall asleep as we get into some of the calculations here. Just for perspective, and for those of you that aren't familiar, WGI, Carl Walker merged with WGI about 10 years ago. And so when Ray and I were with Carl Walker, we were producing this letter, and that's the legacy. Just for perspective here, the original newsletter with the cost outlook is there on the left, and this year's cost outlook with pretty picture of our City of Georgetown garage that just opened up last year is on the right there. Again, for perspective here, what did it cost in 2003 to build a parking garage? It was about 11 grand, just a little over 11 grand a space was the national median. $35 a square foot. And as you can see in 2026, we're basically 3 times that amount at this point. COVID did a number on us, but just the natural progression of inflation and everything has contributed to that. And also parking garages have evolved, and Ray will touch on that a little bit here and cause just the cost to go up.
As you can see here, a little bit of the history, as Rob pointed out, during the COVID years, we had some big jumps of 15, 16%, 8%, and then it's started to get a little bit back to what we think is the normal, which is in that 4 or 5% range over the last several years. So how do we generate all this? It all starts with a lot of projects, hundreds of projects, thousands of data points. But some of the most important data points that we track is we definitely where the garage is built, what year and month was it bid, number of parking spaces, total square footage, how much that garage cost back when it was bid. We need to understand the ENR building cost index of the month that it was bid so that we can bring those costs back to today's dollars. And then to normalize it, we need to know the city cost factor index for that city the year it was built so that we can normalize it to the national average. Here's a little sample of our database of hundreds of projects that we have. Here's a little clip of 16, and it has all the items that I just talked about that we track and keep part of. When you dive in and look at one particular garage, we'll use as an example, and that's the Evans Town Center Garage in Evans, Georgia. You see there what the building cost index was, 6043 back when it was built in July of 2018, and then all the other pertinent data. And we'll get into the next slide about how we use that data. The first data point is the ENR building cost index for July of 2018. This allows us to bring it back to today's dollars. We'll take that information and along with the cost of the garage and number of spaces and square footage. So we start with the ENR building cost index, and then next slide we calculate what we call is the bringing it to today's dollars. So the escalation factor, and we take today's ENR building cost index for May of 2026, is when we wrote the article, and we divide it by what it was back in July of 2018, and we get a escalation factor of 1.41, and that brings that project's construction cost to today's dollars by multiplying the original $4.4 million garage by that factor. And now today it would be 6.19, and it would be 22,000 a space and 64 bucks a square foot. And next, we want to normalize it. So we do that by taking the city index in the closest city to Evans, Georgia. And so we use Augusta, Georgia, and it has a city index of 86.9. And so we get the location factor. We take 100, which is the national average, and we divide it by the city factor for Evans of 86.9, and we get the normalization factor of 1.51. And then that brings it to the normalized data. And that's what we take all the garages we've ever got in our database, and we convert all of those to today's dollars and normalize each of those. For this Evans garage, its data point in our big database after we normalize everything would be 25,000 a space and 75 bucks a square foot. And we do that for all of our projects that are part of our cost article database. And then this is a picture of the Evans garage. You can kind of see there that it's a pretty straightforward garage, not a lot of bells and whistles. That's why it's running 25,000 a space and 75 bucks a square foot. Pretty basic parking structure.
lot of gray precast, one elevator, no frills, no equipment. So yeah, right on the money there, Ray.
Yeah. So, reason why it is what it is, and some of the things that we do, we obviously we have to escalate it. We have to normalize the data. We put it in one big pool, and then that's how we calculate our national average. Over the years, we have took out some of our older garages because today's garages, have more technology, more architecture, more amenities. You see a lot of garages these days that have, street level retail and stuff. And a lot of the older garages, did not have that kind of bells and whistles and architecture. So we are taking away some of the oldest garages out of the database to come up with our new national average, which is today 33,300 per space and $98.75 a square foot. That's our national median for 2026. And I'll let Rob talk about how we use these numbers.
All right. So we got these published numbers, and in our article, we also publish a table of cities, and the cities that we include on the list are a little arbitrary. So I was saying, well, what if we wanted to build a garage in Birmingham, Alabama? And I just noticed that we actually do have Birmingham, Alabama on this year's chart. So ignore that for the time being. But let's say we wanted to build one there, and we didn't have that data point, and we were going to pick a city that was close by. You could look at Atlanta. Atlanta's pretty close to Birmingham, but Atlanta's a lot bigger city. It's got greater population density, and much higher cost of living. So hypothetically, you could use the Atlanta number and still be close, but let's dial it in. And this applies to any city. You would first take a try to determine what the city index is for Birmingham specifically, and if you have access to RS Means city index, you could grab that number. This year, Birmingham city index is 88.1. If you don't have access to the RS Means number, you can honestly grab the cost of living. Look on the internet, and you can get pretty close to what that is just based on the cost of living as compared to the national average. You would then multiply the national median cost to by that city factor or cost of living factor, and it would reduce or increase, depending on where you are, the construction costs for that particular facility in that particular city. And I've run through that calculation here. The national median cost times 88.1 gives you a cost of about a little over $29,000 a space, and square foot costs about $87 a square foot. Then you're going to want to inflate that cost to anticipate when you might build this garage. I guess if you're going to build it tomorrow, then you could use that cost as is. But typically it takes at least 6 months to design and get a set of or get a contractor under a contractor to build the garage. So let's say you're going to build this garage about a year from now, and so you're going to want to inflate that construction cost number based on what the expectation for annual inflation is. Historically, from 2007 to 2020, We've had just under 4% inflation beginning in 22, coming out of this is after COVID, post COVID. We're closer to about 4.5% inflation annualized. Some of that may be due to tariffs, some of that may be due to some of the geopolitical situation, but we're at a little higher level of inflation than in years past. So just for conservatism, let's say we're going to use 5% inflation, and we're going to take our 29,337 number and $87 a square foot and inflate them by 5%. And so to build a garage about a year from now, it's going to cost you about a little under 31 grand a space, or $91 a square foot.
So once we have the cost article data, I want to make sure that everybody understands that that represents the hard construction cost for the garage, not the added soft costs. And we'll get into soft costs here in just a minute. But since it is the medium and it's not the high end garage or the low end garage, it's kind of in the middle. So you have to kind of understand that the data you get from our cost article is kind of a basic garage. And some of the things that would affect it being more cost per space or more cost per square foot, or a lot of the extra drivers like enhanced technology, parking guidance system, additional fire protection, or if you have a lot of EV parking spaces, if you have more stair towers than the normal garage, which normally has two, you might have stormwater management requirements on your site. All those things kind of drive up the cost. And then obviously if you get underground, that's another factor about what it does to drive up the cost. The garage has to be ventilated. If it's not an open garage, that also drives up cost. But what you can get for our cost are, here's just some photos that we felt like were around the national median. The big garage at the Port of Galveston, State Farm's garages in Bloomington, Illinois, and the Bushnell garage in Connecticut. All those pretty basic precast garages with a little bit of nice features to them. That's precast. And here's some examples of some cast in place garages. The big Norfolk International Airport garages around the national average. You can tell the exterior is pretty straightforward. It's also a very large garage, so you get a lot of economy of scale with size. The smaller the garage is, the higher the cost will be per space, just because you lack that economy of scale. So those are just some examples of some cast in place PT garages that you can get.
Yeah, and as Ray and I were talking about this beforehand, I was a little surprised that the School of Mines garage came in as inexpensively as it, or right on the median as it did, because it's a pretty nice garage, and it does have parking guidance and some of those other things. So I guess it all depends on timing and all kinds of other things too. So talked about the construction cost of a garage, parking structure, in very broad terms. The cost, the overall cost per square foot, the overall cost per car. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what make the items or the trades and materials that make up that overall cost. We like to think of garage construction, or most people think of garage construction in terms of the materials and the trades involved, and the Construction Specifications Institute, CSI, has served as the standard for the industry as to how those trades and materials are broken up into the various divisions. There are 50 divisions, but I'm just showing the handful, or the ones that typically pertain to parking garage construction. We're not building nuclear power plants and so on and so forth. So jumping into it. Oh, well, and just for reference, the AIA pay applications, the AIA Form G702, G703 pay applications that are more or less the industry standard for construction projects, are also set up to be or are set up for organization using the CSI format. And here's just a snip of a project that shows you what we're talking about there. So jumping into the nuts and bolts here, the items that make up the foundations and the superstructure, mostly for parking garages, concrete, steel, a little bit of masonry, but between unless you have a steel garage, which there are a few of those around, the concrete makes up about half the cost of the garage, and then masonry and steel contribute a little bit, 3 to 4% of that beyond. And again, caveat that with if you're putting a roof on the garage, that's going to add more steel cost and whatnot. But just in general, the superstructure of the garage and garages. When I got into this business, the gentleman that convinced me to come on board said, the beautiful thing about garages, this is appealing to a young structural engineer. The beautiful thing about garages is that they're almost pure structure, and that plays itself out in the cost as well. There's very little in the way of finishes and amenities, although that's changing to a certain degree. The next piece of the puzzle is the durability components: waterproofing systems, membranes, roofing, flashing. These are the items that help a garage last a long time if they're done correctly. They make up somewhere between 1% and 3% of the construction cost typically. The architectural components, the things that the elements that make a garage look nice, make it comfortable and safe to occupy, add to the security and so on and so forth. So, and they can vary depending on the complexity of the architecture. I mean, if you're doing a parking structure in downtown Savannah or Charleston with all the historic architectural requirements, that's going to drive that cost up. But typically, it's somewhere in the 5 to 10% of the total cost. And finishes can vary too. I mean, you can really enhance the light distribution and feel of the interior by painting the walls and the ceilings, or staining the ceilings, bright white or off white, and get a lot of bang for the buck. But it does add to the cost of the overall cost of the structure. Another component is your elevator and your elevators and your parking specialty systems. And as Ray mentioned, when we were talking about how we've started eliminating older projects from the analysis, not from the database, but from the analysis. Parking technology is definitely contributing to some of the increases in costs. We've moved away from a gate and a ticket spitter and a manned cashier booth, and parking technology is all about occupancy sensing and license plate recognition cameras and software, and with artificial intelligence overlays to know who's in your garage and where, and make sure that they're paying, and doing enforcement and collections and all that sort of thing. So the gates are gone, but the vendors are more than making up for the fact that the gates are gone in a lot of facilities by selling software subscriptions and occupancy sensing technology and so on. Electrical systems and plumbing systems, the electrical components can make up a significant portion of the garage, and typically most of that cost is lighting, and maybe a little bit for elevators, but a lot of municipalities, jurisdictions are starting to require electric vehicle charging, and some of them, who I won't mention here, have kind of gone off the deep end and mandating the number of charging stations and EV charging installed versus EV charging ready and EV charging capable. But that can definitely add a significant percentage to the construction. And traditionally, we're putting 1 to 2% of the number of spaces in the garage. We're putting charging stations equivalent to 1 to 2% of the total number of parking stations in the garage, or parking spaces in the garage. But some jurisdictions now are requiring, parts of California for residential garages are requiring 100%, level 1 installed. So, so anyway, that can add a significant percentage. The other thing that's driving up costs these days too is the fact that fire sprinklers are now required in most garages. In any jurisdiction that is subject to IBC 2021 now requires fire sprinkling for garages with a fire area greater than 49,000 square feet, or 48,000 square feet, excuse me. There's a little bit of debate as to what constitutes a fire area in a parking garage, since there's no requirement for separation between floors. But a lot of fire authorities are now saying that, if you've got a garage that exceeds 48,000 square feet total, you need to sprinkle it. And just for context, there, a 48,000 square foot garage might accommodate 150 cars. So that you can do the math there and know that unless you're building something less than 150 cars, you're probably going to have fire sprinklers installed. NFPA, Life Safety Code, and their parking garage code, the 88A code, which some jurisdictions, Georgia, for example, references or incorporates, they require all parking garages to be fire sprinklered regardless of size. So, and to be fair, there are some jurisdictions that have basically taken that requirement out or stricken that requirement. Florida comes to mind. They've got still language in there that says open parking garages don't have to be sprinkled. If I recall correctly, I want to say Ohio may as well. And I know that the latest North Carolina code exempts garages with type 1A construction from fire sprinkling. So we'll see how this evolves, but that is definitely something that's driving costs up. Civil components, that's site work, utilities, landscaping, all the stuff that goes into the site work associated for a parking garage, and that can make up to 10% of the cost depending on the complexity of the site. And then layered on top of everything else is the contractor's overhead and profit, their the cost to mobilize their forces, And then their monthly costs for staff and their trailer and their pickup trucks and computers and copiers and everything that they pass along. Just almost every contractor I've ever seen gets a new pickup truck at the beginning of a project, so that's buried in there somewhere probably too, right? Anyway, that's the hard costs and how they break down. Ray, you want to talk about soft costs?
Yeah, the other component to an overall garage project, it's obviously the hard costs, which Rob just talked about, but then there's always the soft costs, and that's where the engineering services, design services come into play. So you have design fees. It fluctuates from 4 to 8%. The larger the garage, and the less complex it is, the smaller that percentage will be. Maybe the smaller the garage, the more complexity, the more you'd be at the higher end of that for the design fees. You obviously have, testing and special inspection cost. You may have land cost for real estate to buy the property, taxes, insurance. Owners sometimes have to plug in a certain number there to manage the overall project from their end. They also want to have a design and construction contingency to cover any unforeseen conditions that happen as they try to get out of the ground and as things just come up. So they'll add 3 to 10% for owner contingency for construction. Now that overall soft cost is somewhere between 15 to 25%. And so we normally try to tell our clients to budget around 20% for soft cost. So total project cost would be the hard cost plus the soft cost. Let's dive into the design components of the soft cost. And that's kind of broken down by, you have a prime consultant. That's the person who manages all the other disciplines, keeps them in line, and coordinates directly to the owner. So he's the primary point of contact. That's your prime consultant. The architect, does a lot of the architectural features, the exterior look of the garage, the stairs, the elevators. They do the life safety plans and egress. They handle all the occupied spaces if it's a mixed use facility, the lobbies of the stair towers and such, and they'll detail all that. The structural engineer, he'll be doing all of the foundation calculations and detailing, slab on grade, superstructure, and then the roofs over the occupied space, stair towers, and elevators. That they'll be detailing that. It's kind of what the structural engineer does on a parking garage. The parking designer, like we are at WGI, we do that in structural engineering along with other components. But the parking designer, he'll lay out the garage. It's all about how you enter the garage and circulate both vertically and horizontally as you try to find your parking space. And then once you get out and you become a pedestrian, we'll define all the wayfinding and signage as you work your way to the stair tower and ultimately out of the garage to your final destination. We'll also handle the parking technology, the access and revenue control systems, the parking guidance system. If it's a large garage and we're trying to help you find the available space on a large footprint of a single level, you can see the individual lights over the parking stalls that tell you if one's occupied or not. Parking count systems, if you want to know if the garage is full or how many spaces is available. That's all that stuff that we lay out and specify as part of our design. And then we also do the drainage design, which is it's a whole unique thing all in itself. Trying to make a garage drain as water and salt and snow hit the surface. We're trying to get that to the drains as quickly as possible so that those chlorides don't set on the deck and create damage. So we're defining the drains and where the drains are located and how the garage slopes to get to the drains. That's an art all in itself. And then we do the waterproofing systems, deck coatings, sealers, sealants, and stuff like that that maintains overall long-term durability. The MEP engineer on the job, he's designing the electrical systems. Most important thing on those is the lights and communication. Plumbing engineer, he's getting all that water, out of the garage. And if you got some occupied space, then you got some HVAC that you have to lay out and detail. Rob touched on earlier, the civil engineer, he's doing all the work around the perimeter of the garage, either, if you're designing a road that comes up to the garage, landscaping around it for stormwater management systems, they're doing all of that. They take care of all the utilities. Once, the MEP engineer gets the utilities 5 feet outside the building, and the civil engineer takes them from that location and then ultimately hooks them up to the local utilities. And the landscaping guy does all the plants and hardscapes around the perimeter of the garage. And, this varies from project to project, and it depends on how complicated any one discipline might be, but that we take a normal job and we kind of break down the percentages that the prime consultant will get, the architect, and so forth. These all fluctuate quite a bit depending on if we got a really complex, civil and stormwater management, then their percentages will go up. If it's got a lot of interior space, and obviously the MEP work's gonna go up and down. So all these fluctuate, but these are some basic breakdowns.
All right. Oop. So we've talked about what the hard construction costs are, like what you're paying the contractor to build the garage, and we've talked about the soft costs, and we dove a little bit. Ray dove into the the design side of things and how that breaks down. But let's say at this point you have now built your garage and it's open for business. You're still not done paying for it. Well, obviously, if you financed it, you've got finance costs too, but you still have to budget money to operate and maintain a parking garage. And this is where some people miss the boat a little bit, and that they don't understand that there's a pretty significant annual operating cost, or annual cost to operate and maintain a facility. There's a variety of elements that goes into operations and maintenance. And for those of you that may have seen prior presentations, we fleshed this out a little bit more, parsed it out a little bit beyond what we did last year. So big expense, the biggest expense typically on a parking structure, parking facility, are the utility costs. And the number one utility cost is the electrical, because you need electricity to run your lighting, to do your electric vehicle charging, and that can be a massive cost if you have to, say, provide 25% EV installed, like City of Atlanta might have you do. And then, there's a little bit of electricity required to run the elevators and any sort of HVAC system. If you got underground parking, you got to have a mechanical ventilation system with gas detection and so on and so forth. And all these cost money. In addition to the electrical costs, there's also cost for telecom now, which is typically either broadband connectivity or cell connectivity to your various parking technologies and your elevator system and everything else. And then also trash pickup is a utility that requires a monthly fee typically. On top of utilities, there's a cost for on-site personnel, labor and operations expenses for on-site personnel. On-site personnel include on-site personnel and operations. Would include your housekeeping, that's picking up your trash. Just running through the stairs and elevators and make sure that there's nothing in there that's going to deter your customers, your clients. Your routine maintenance, that would be things like touch-up painting, replacing a burned out or a damaged light bulb, or um, routine maintenance probably also. I would say routine maintenance also includes wash downs, once or twice a year. It would include repainting the parking stripes about every other year probably, and fixing if you got one leaking joint over here or there, it'd be handling those things. That's what I would call routine maintenance. Parking enforcement. If you have an open parking garage, if you have an ungated parking garage or parking facility, then enforcement's part of your computation, whether that's directed enforcement or automated enforcement or patrols or whatever. There is a cost there for that. If you have a valet operation, that's something else. And then and particularly in urban settings, but frankly, in just about anywhere, you're going to have some sort of security presence just to keep bad things from happening. There's administrative expenses. This would be your office personnel. You typically have a property manager. That manager is probably managing several properties, but there is a cost associated with that. There's monitoring. When I drive up into a lane, or pull up to an intercom, or press the button on a blue light system, there's got to be somebody to answer those calls. So equipment, and technology monitoring. There are legal fees. There's accounting and taxes and insurance and office supplies and collections for those folks that opted not to pay. So there's expenses associated with just the general administration of the facility. And then we've talked about technology expenses. Most of the technology now has a annual subscription fee or an annual maintenance contract, along with the traditional maintenance contracts that we've had forever, like elevator maintenance contract and fire sprinkler, fire pump maintenance contracts. But some of the newer ones are EV equipment. A lot of that has a software as a service aspect to it, where you're paying for somebody to regulate and collect revenue, or monitor and regulate power, and so on. Up in the upper Midwest and the Northeast and the mountains, there's snow removal, and that can get pretty darn expensive. Every year now, south of the Mason-Dixon line, it's not as great a concern. But anyway, you have a bunch of service contracts that you have to maintain over the course of the year. And then lastly, and this is one that gets omitted, I think, or ignored. You really want to be putting away from day one, the day the garage opens. You want to be putting away something into escrow to deal with future capital maintenance projects, because regardless of how well you take care of your facility, if you maintain it and do everything that you're supposed to do, there are still going to be capital maintenance projects as the garage ages. For example, joint sealants. Joint sealants last maybe 5 to at most 10 years. If they're exposed to ultraviolet, on the roof level of a garage, you're going to be replacing those every 5 years. The ones covered levels, probably every 7 to 10 years. Concrete cracks, you're going to have to be looking for leaks, and you're going to want to seal those cracks one way or another. Membrane systems last maybe 10 years. Expansion joints, maybe 10 years. If you're snow plowing on top, it'll be a lot less than 10 years. Light fixtures have defined life. So, you might be bulb replacement, the lamp itself, or it might be the fixtures as they age. Those acrylic lenses and covers start to yellow over time, particularly when they're exposed to UV. So there's a whole variety of capital repairs and maintenance that you're going to have to do one way or the other. And after 20 years, maybe, in the upper Midwest or the Northeast, maybe sooner than that, you're going to be having to do some amount of concrete repairs, because eventually the steel in the concrete will rust. And particularly if there's salt usage, road salts and salt spread out on the deck. And that rust will cause the concrete to delaminate, and you'll end up having to do some repairs there moving forward. And I say you need to start putting away money at day one, so that by the time year 6, 7, 8 rolls around and you're having to start doing some of these things, you actually have a little bit of a reserve built up. So what does this break down to? And again, it's going to depend on your unique situation. Obviously, the cost of electricity and the cost of maintenance contracts and everything else, and the cost of labor and materials is going to vary depending on where you are in the country. This is kind of a broad brush. You might call this a national median cost for operating expenses, although it's not nearly as scientific as our construction cost. This is just based on what we were able to collect. I keep telling our colleague Ben Sands that he needs to do an article and an analysis based on operating costs. But yeah, maybe that's something we'll do in the future. Any case, the cost breakdown, something like this. I would say $125 per space per year for capital reserve is probably a minimum. If you're in the upper Midwest, you probably want to do more than that. But I would expect to have to budget, at least this amount, close to $700 per space per year, for operating and maintaining the garage. I will, I've got a little asterisk there by the technical and maintenance contracts, and that number, that $40 per space per year, does not include snow removal. So snow removal will be above and beyond that, and it doesn't include real heavy, SaaS fee, software as a service fee for your parking technology. So depending on what type of parking technology you have, that number can go up significantly. So that is operating, and that kind of brings us full circle and towards the end of our proposal, and we got about I think 10 minutes maybe left in our hour. Here's a QR code that you can scan, and that will take you to the web page that has our Karst article in it if you haven't downloaded it. But at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Daniel to see if there's any questions that we can answer at this point.
For sure. Thanks a lot, Rob and Ray. Appreciate that. It's fantastic as always. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. section of the Teams webinar, not in the chat, in the Q&A. We'll read them off to Rob and Ray here. I think a few of these have been answered as they were coming in as the presentation was going on. But we'll start with the first one that came in. Where are you tracking PG efficiency on each project? Are you tracking PG data or pure PG versus PG above a different use? Also subterranean versus above grade.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot in that question. We are tracking parking garage efficiency. Our median efficiency is right around 360 square feet per car or per space. So that captures. I think it's weighted mostly towards standalone. It demonstrates that our analysis, or not our analysis, but our database is skewed towards standalone, long span parking structures. And in our analysis, and Ray can comment on this too, our analysis, we actually take out consideration of any underground parking facilities or parking facilities that are, even if they're not underground, that are integral with another building above them, just because
it has a big impact on the efficiency because of all the short span construction, and some of the other things that can affect the efficiency. Depends if the run-of-the-mill garage in that range that Rob just mentioned, 350. But if you get into big event garages that have high turnover and volumes, and that efficiency can grow up to almost close to 400. If depends on how big the garage is and how fast we're moving vehicles in and out of that. Underground is its own kind of animal. And that's why we take those out of the cost, not our overall database, but the cost outlook article database, because they really skew the cost, because just a basic one level below grade can be about a 50% premium. And then as you go down 2 levels below grade can be 100% premium, 3 levels about 150% premium. And then it kind of tops out at about a 200% premium when you get down to those garages that are 4 to 5 levels below grade. So that's why we take them out of the database, take them out of our cost article analysis, because they dramatically would skew the cost.
Hopefully that answers that multi-part question there.
Yeah, we got a follow-up to it actually too as well. With significant variability in parking garage efficiency, why not budget parking garage cost on a cost per square foot basis rather than cost per stall?
Exactly. That's a great comment. We provide cost per square foot, and strongly, actually, 9 times out of 10, that's what we're doing, budgeting on a cost per square foot basis. But cost per car is something that just in general people have a little better sense of at the outset, rather than the total square footage. But
I know
certainly,
when we do our cost estimates internally, we will use cost per square foot when we calculate the cost, not the cost per space.
Yeah. So that question, that comments, definitely on point there.
I think we answered this in the soft cost section. We do include site work, parking, structural, MEP, elevators, and access equipment in the cost. Just wanted to confirm that one for Mr. Robert.
Yeah, yes. For sure.
Yep, for sure.
And we've got one from Mr. Jamie here. We're seeing a lot of issues with precast garages and the need to replace the bearing pads on the upper decks. How do you all deal with having to jack up the double T's to replace these pads? It seems we need to cut dowels and connector plates.
That's that's probably a little beyond the scope of this particular conversation, but um,
Actually, I know that it happens a lot. Those pads work their way out, and a lot of times you can just trim the pad.
Yep.
And unless there's really creating an edge crack or an edge spall where that edge of that double T is really digging into its pocket, we'll just trim the pad and not try to replace it. And about now, if we are having some cracking along the edges or some spalling, then we would have to go in there, release the connections, lift the double T, and replace the pad. So only in the worst, kind of the worst of the worst conditions would we recommend.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think replacement of bearing pads is very much overdiagnosed the necessity of replacing them. So that's a separate conversation. I will say that what we see a lot of in pre-top decks or factory topped precast decks is failed flange connections. I think it's just a symptom or a flaw in that particular type of construction. So when I have the opportunity, I typically advise against pre-topped precast and nothing against precast. I think precast has its place in it. I've done plenty of really good precast garages, but if I have my preference, I'll do a field topped, cast in place topping applied after construction, and that's a much more durable system. Sorry, it's off on a tangent here. What else?
I think with our last question here we got a two-parter from Mr. Steven. He wants to know if we include land in the cost, and if not, then why? And then what do you think is the delta install delivery cost when delivered as a private project versus a public one?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, land's definitely not in the cost because the cost of land is all over the place.
Yeah,
It's
place to place.
a lot in downtown Manhattan is going to cost you a heck of a lot more than a lot in rural Iowa. So there's no real way to bake that into the cost. Read the second part of that question again.
Yeah, he wants to know the delta install delivery cost when the project is private versus public.
Ooh, that's interesting. Depends on the owner, I suppose. Higher ed, public higher ed or higher ed in general is, those projects tend to be more expensive just because the collegial architecture and all the
they're either matching the campus architecture or if it's downtown in a historic district, like the Georgetown garage had a big component there that had to match the historical downtown, so that can drive up the costs. And sometimes the public looking a little bit longer term sometimes than the private, and so a little bit more durability, bells and whistles in those facilities versus the private facilities.
Yeah, I don't know that we could put a number on that because
Right.
Private can range anywhere from, I'm a private developer and I'm trying to put something out there as quickly and as cheaply as I can, and I'm going to flip it as soon as I'm done with it. And that could drive the price way down. But
that could be just spitballing. That could be a 5 or 10% delta.
Yeah, but there's plenty of privately developed garages. I'm doing a private garage now for a building owner that's probably 3 times the price just because of the architectural requirements and the size. So maybe
yeah, more driven about by the owner and what the owner wants out of the garage than necessarily if it's public or private.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So I don't know that we answered I don't think we answered your question, but I don't think there's a good answer for that question.
That was a great answer, guys. I think We've got one more quick one if you guys want to answer it. We're running
Sure.
up on time here. Any trends for more spaces or areas for e-bikes, motorcycles, or scooters, etc.? Alternative mobility options.
Yes. The short answer is yes.
Yeah, I mean, we just finished a garage that has a mobility hub in it, and there's just a big emphasis to have parking, even places to repair your bike. Bike storage, bike repair, e-bikes, all of that is going to get more and more prevalent.
I'm looking at one right now on the basically on the beach in Florida, in Western Florida, that or Panhandle, Florida, that we're talking about e-bikes and e-scooters and space for rideshare pickup and space for the trolley and um, a way to rent beach chairs and beach like a wagon to haul your stuff out to the beach. So yeah, I guess that's all different types of mobility. But yes, to Ray's point, almost every public facility is looking at something like that.
Awesome, guys. Well, that's all the questions that are in here. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to Rob or Ray directly. We'll also send out the recording and the leave behind by the end of the week. So stay tuned for that. I appreciate you guys and appreciate all the questions. Thank you so much again for another great Parking Cost Outlook webinar.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good afternoon.